Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So this is a media channel, so a bit more free-flowing, a bit more freestyle. As I get more subscribers, probably become a bit more formal and organised, but at the moment, a bit more free-flowing. So first things first, happy Monday, and shout out to those guiding, scouting who did Jota Jebri of the Air and Guide to Unite and State Camp. Absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, due to me having some previous commitments in my personal life, could not go. But shout out to the leaders who made it happen as well. So guys, current reading book, If Science Has to Save Us by Reese Martin. I know that's flipped around. Absolutely amazing book, very up to date. I do believe he's a royal astronomer as well, fellow and former master of Trinity College, Cambridge, emeritus professor of cosmology and astrophysics at the University of Cambridge, and he sits as a member of the UK House of Lords. Absolutely amazing to see a politician with a science background. He also goes in the book mentioned Arthur Eddington because that was also a position Arthur Eddington held. I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, don't come after me, but just correct me, Eddington taught at the University of Cambridge. So Eddington is the person who actually proved Einstein's theory of relativity by taking 2 photos and an eclipse as well. So guys, an overview, it's written probably about a year 7 to 8 reading level in Australia as well. It's talking about science in the digital age, good and bad science, knowing how to check the funding as well. That learning is like a lifelong process as well. So this I love, in his saying, taking optimum advantage of the internet for education, but being aware of your sources as well. So I love this take. So this is after the intro. It's some words of H.G. Wells a century ago resonate even more strongly today. We're in a race between education and catastrophe. Absolutely amazing, because he does go on to talk about fake news and how fake news, clickbait, can literally be in developing nations the difference between life and death as well. So he talks about global mega challenges and the need, and that catchphrase, the need to act locally, think globally. Look, we can all do what we can, and not to feel guilty that if the only thing you can do is recycle instead of throwing things in landfill or washing the top a lot longer as well. And so they talk about GM crops, so genetically modified as well, things in factory farming, and how we generally need to go back to restorative farming, biodiversity as well. So guys, just flipping through as well. As a side note, guys, I am so tired, I'm going to take the rest of the day off. He goes into like global emissions targets as well, net zero, things like that as well. Then CRISPR, gene editing, AI, the ethics of gene editing, AI, design of babies, things like that. The ethics of like private research labs versus university funded labs, as well, like how that feels very Brave New Huxley's Brave New World type of thing. And he also goes into the law of unintended consequences. So if we're able to eliminate certain diseases and disabilities, what will that be the flow-on effect? Will it be good, bad, type of thing? Also goes N5-1H1 influenza virus. Guys, yes, I am far enough in gain of function research, and he goes into the levels of labs. I'm sure we're all aware of that now after 2020 and 2021, the levels of lab and the biosecurity controls. And he does touch on it briefly, but what happens if biosecurity is breached? So he goes into the Jacobs-Crockel disease, which is mad cow disease, the outbreak from the lab in Britain, and the need to have the labs like Plum Island and Green Island. They're an island if it escapes the island as well. And yes, I know I should not be dog-earing books, or I should buy them outright. He also goes into like AI programming and how programming can help or hindering Isaac Asimov's like ethics of computers and prime directive as well, and how that might eliminate jobs or it might add to them, that like human facing jobs, caring for the elderly, caring for the disabled, is going to be the next job market, or the need for a global basic income type of thing. So like he goes into machine learning versus curiosity of humans as well. Then it goes into DARPA and DARPA's role in creating the internet as well. The space race, so NASA, the military-industrial complex he touches on. He also goes on to like avoiding doom, that how we can get, especially in the social media age, we can get trapped in echo chambers and rabbit holes, the need for diverse media, the need to, in science, to expect criticism, and how STEM is now becoming STEAM, how there's an element of arts in there as well. He also goes into like Edison, Tesla, Eddington, all had jobs as well. Goes through ethicists and what they're dealing with, and the role of philosophy in scientific ethics as well, that we shouldn't take religious beliefs out of the equation, but they're just as valuable. He doesn't specify which religious beliefs, but respecting them. Also, he goes into the culture of science, the globalist nature of it as well, scientific revolutions, and he goes into the fact that there hasn't just been one scientific revolution. Like we've had the Industrial Revolution, but scientific revolutions happen every day. The internet changed things, COVID changed things. He talks about the new normal and the realisation that the education system is broken, that online learning is the way to go, that as well, organised skepticism, which I like that one, how science can get politicised as well. And I know it's been politicised forever, going back to Copernicus and Galileo. Like they're going through citizen science as well, how religion often was at the forefront of science before the plague as well, that it was often religion driving science because they were searching for God how like they're really good science communicators like Neil deGrasse as well. They're saying about like the pre-internet science and publish and perish, and like how peer review can get corrupted as well. And it's a really up-to-date book, really easy to read. He goes into like the history of health, of like how we thought tobacco was bad, how fat's bad, how sugar's bad, and stuff like that. And how research can get corrupted, and how to read who's funding the research as well. He also goes through like sloganeering as well. Also, I know I've talked about her over on the blog, the philosopher Hannah Arendt, who wrote Ekman in Jerusalem, goes as well. I love this line: the ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced nasty or the convinced communist, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction, i.e. the reality of experience, and the distinction between true and false, i.e. the standards of thought, no longer exist. Which is even more true in the internet age, where fake news, misinformation, clickbait is rife as well. So they've gone through like the media, and they even do some shout out to some really good science educators, YouTubers, podcasters as well. They go through that why we haven't gone back to the moon, space developments and stuff like that. That in the medical arena, fake news can be a matter of life and death as well. He talks about like policy issues in science as well, critical thinking, how to promote critical thinking as well, like policies around science. He's talked about how a lot of the chief medical officers became celebrities during the lockdowns. Like localized emergencies as well, how he goes through like supply chain things, like he touches on when the I can't pronounce it, the volcano in Iceland erupted, raised questions about travel and volcanology and stuff like that as well, and how different sciences are very pigeonholed and really should be communicating. He also goes through what the Nobel Prize excludes as well. He also goes through of like AI and computer programmers and stuff like that. Advisors and campaigners as well, especially like defence and arms are kind of diminishing, that the new war is information and control of information as well. Like he talks about at Cambridge there's the Centre for the Study of Existential Risks, so extreme events, especially I'm reading here, those stemming from advancing technology such as synthetic biology and AI. So its rationale is that though we fret unduly about small rich, which are heavily studied, we're in denial about high consequence but low probability events, and that these scenarios deserve much more attention, which I actually do agree with as well. You've probably heard the economic term a black swan event, where it was basically that black swans were considered non-existent until scientists came out to Australia, saw black swans and realised that they do exist, but they are very rare. In Australia, they're not rare at all. And it's like, oh, we're thinking about this in the wrong way. Guys, then he goes through like special inquiries in the US, the Defence Advanced Research Project. Shout out to AJ and the Y-Files. He has covered DARPA better than I ever could as well. They also go into CERN and the Higgs-Boson particle as well, and what CERN actually does versus what, dare I say it, but we've all got a right to free thought and free speech, the conspiracy channels are saying about what's happening at CERN as well. We've also got to remember that there's a lot of science that doesn't get published. It might be classified for military or cybersecurity reasons, because we've got to remember that the general public is not as educated as they were, and that unfortunately our IQs are going down as well. It's also goes, STEM and not STEM. Enhancing education. He talks about like online and remote teaching, make a more realistic assessment of what's the most effective use of contact hours. There's also talking about massive open online courses, so platforms like Allison and Coursera, but I do a lot of my courses through LinkedIn Learning as well, that where the sunk cost fallacy is a lot less, because you realise a lot quicker that you're not capable of doing it, rather than trying to muddle through because you've invested time, money, effort, transport in possibly physically moving as well. He talks about like flexibility in funding for studying as well. And that he goes into like ivory tower thinking in science, that it needs to be brought back to the people as well. So guys, a really interesting read. Is saying about novel viruses, antibiotic resistance, all things that are becoming issues in modernity. He also talks about isolation. I know in the previous video on Project Unlonely, they talked, that was the whole point of that book, but they also talk about loneliness being an epidemic, a more pervasive epidemic than COVID would ever be, and how to stop that one as well. So guys, thank you. So all rights to him. It's if science is to save us, Martin Rees as well. And yeah, we are kind of all looking to science for answers, but he also discusses, well, what about looking to arts, to culture, to faith-based communities as well. So guys, shout out to my patrons, Clay, who's been with me since the beginning, Fireworks, Laura over on Substack, my amazing volunteer team as well. And guys, the best way you can support this channel, if you can't afford to support me on Patreon, guys, is definitely to subscribe. Other places you can find me, over on the main channel, Annie's Escapades, over on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, Enabling Progress, conversations around the NDIS, over on Blogger as Annie in Wonderland, Substack as Andrew Nunn, TikTok as Andrew Nunn. So guys, I will see you Tuesday.